Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm your host, Anna Heslop, and today my guest is Nick Davies, who's a researcher who shares his time between FAR and ag research. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you.
Nick is involved in a research project evaluating some alternative options for desiccating radish and beet seed crops. The work's being done through SIRC, the Seed Industry Research Centre. And for those of you who are a wee bit unsure about how SIRC works, it was set up in 2017. It's an industry partnership which has the kind of lofty goal of maintaining New Zealand's competitive advantage in the international seed trade. So it's a partnership, it's voluntary, but it does a lot of funding of seed research projects. So I'm going to start, Nick, by asking, why are we looking at alternatives for radish and beet seed desiccation when we've got perfectly good products there already?
Right. So I think it was 2019, the Europeans banned the use of diquat, which we use quite heavily. And something that's come out in SIRC priorities, which are the research priorities which are voted on by the partners each year. So in the last couple of years, looking for an alternative for diquat for those markets has kind of come up under the concern that the European Union or some of our export markets generally may turn around and say, well, if you're going to sell that seed to us, you can't use that anymore. And if that happens, we kind of want something that we can use instead as an alternative, especially if it comes in quite quickly without much notice. Okay,
so the growers in Europe are already not allowed to use diquat, and now they're concerned even about seed production use, potentially.
Potentially, yes. I mean, this hasn't started. It's just a concern that some of the seed companies have that this is coming down the line.
Okay. And is it likely to impact on any other crops?
It's pretty hard to say, but vegetable seed crops generally, I would put all in the same basket, I guess. So okay. If you're using it in something else, then, but radish and beets being the big ones.
So what are the trials? What are you looking at for radish and beet?
Right. So we're looking for desiccation alternatives to diquat. So last year we ran 2 trials in radish because radish is kind of the hardest one to desiccate. It takes quite a long time to sit there and dry down and for the pods to soften up enough to break open and that sort of thing. So we started with that and we ran 2 trials and we tried to find some other low-cost alternatives. And we tried some slightly interesting things. One of them was egg salt. So if your soil's low on sodium, you might put a sodium fertilizer on. We tried that sort of thing. Urea was another one. And they didn't work really particularly well.
So they were sprayed onto the crop?
Yes, they were, at non-trivial rates too. And the reason we did that actually was I found a paper on, I think, red clover that came out of Norway where they'd had success with liquid urea, sodium, so egg salts, and vinegar was the other one. And they'd had success in that for desiccation alternatives in clover, but they didn't work in radish. We also put on, the ones that kind of worked, we put on were Buster and Buster plus Hammer, Buster plus Sharpen, so Buster-based treatments.
And so how long does it take those products to desiccate? Obviously, it's weather-related, but what sort of timeframes are you looking at?
So last year, we just put them on at regline timing, so we waited for the farmers and the agronomists to make the decision as to when they were going to regline the main crop. And then we went in sort of within 24 hours, either a bit earlier or a bit later, and put it on at the same time and then harvested on the same day so that it was a direct replacement. We're only changing the chemicals. But generally what we found was that we probably needed more time, particularly for glyphosate, but also the Buster-based treatments, seem to dry down slower
Than
Regloan. So this year we've got 2 more trials, one in beet, and the first timing's already gone on, and one in radish, which the first timing will be going on either today or over the weekend or early next week. And they are aimed to be kind of 10 days to 2 weeks before the normal paddock timing, and then we'll put another lot of treatments on just at the normal paddock timing.
I'll just confirm for you that you listeners out there that when we're talking about today, we're talking about the middle of February, because obviously you're not listening to this today. So this year's trials, the treatments have gone on mid-February, and they'll be following up to see what happens there. Are there any other implications of using these products? There's no potential damage for germination or any other seed quality issues?
So one of them was glyphosate, so I'll start with that. We used glyphosate. So last year we germ tested all of the treatments, and we didn't really find a reduction in germination. But we did use glyphosate in one treatment, and it worked surprisingly well, although it did need a bit more time, and that was in radish. Glyphosate we're very nervous about because it's well documented that it can cause issues with germination, with vigor. So if seeds stored for a long period of time, then germination reduces quicker, or in some of the literature it says that that germination will decrease. And in grow out tests, then you can also get kind of poor performing plants, either they'll emerge and then die and that sort of thing. So we're pretty nervous about glyphosate, but it is kind of the one low cost alternative that we have in there that potentially might work in radish. I have excluded it out of beet because it's not in the beet trial, because beet seed kind of has a spongy layer on it, which really soaks things up. And so it's quite a different kind of product to the pod on radish, which is pretty hard and there's not really much getting through it. So we've included that this year in the radish, but not in the beet, because the beet, we're pretty confident that it's not going to be okay.
So that's glyphosate. You're kind of concerned about that. Are there any concerns about any of the other products that you're using?
There is concern around particularly Sharpen and to a lesser extent Hammer, but not really because we know it will do anything, just because we don't know it won't. So we're going to need to do some more work. At least we'll definitely do germination testing on everything this year. And we'll see what we get, but potentially we'll need to do grow outs and things if we think we will carry them forward.
So are these trials going to continue for a couple more years, or what's the deal there?
They will continue at least one more year. I'm actually not 100% sure when the end on the research project is.
And so there's a field day coming up for the radish trial, and it's probably going to be early mid-March, somewhere around Southbridge sort of area. What treatments will people be seeing if they attend that event?
So this year in that trial, then we've got Regloan as a control, Buster plus Hammer, and Buster plus Sharpen, and they are repeated at 2 timings. So the one that went on about today in mid-February, and one that will go on in about 10 days, 2 weeks, so late February, early March, late February hopefully. Then there'll be those two, then there'll be a low rate of Buster applied at both timings to see if we can use less Buster, because it's quite expensive, at 2 timings. And there's also a low rate of Buster with a mystery treatment that we haven't fully decided yet, possibly glyphosate, or possibly something else.
Okay. So you're looking at different products, different rates, different timings, and number of timings.
Yes.
That sounds great. So what's happening in the beet trials? Because that's radish.
So the beet is the same. It is just excludes the glyphosate. But the beet, because it's a bit earlier, it won't line up. So we decided to do the field day in the radish and not the beet this year.
But we'll try and communicate those beet results as they come out.
Yes, well, hopefully we'll have some preliminary results to talk about at the field day. It's just the beet will have been harvested.
Right. Trying to get 2 different crops in the same window doesn't always work, does it? Okay. Well, thanks, Nick. Thank you for explaining that. And as you've heard, if you're in the mid-Canterbury, anywhere between Christchurch and Ashburton, you want to come and have a look at that trial, there'll be a field day advertised shortly around desiccation of radish and beet seed crops. In the meantime, looking out the window today, it doesn't look like a harvest day, but have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.